achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming UFC on Fox 6 card on January 26th. In the main event, Demetrious Johnson defends his flyweight title against John Dodson. 4 main card fights, I'll be breaking them down in this episode. All 8 preliminary predictions will be available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with my bet packs. Now, I'm coming off a 6-4 night at UFC on FX. It started off really well. It kind of sputtered out near the end. But the big part of it was I had a very good night with the bet packs. 3 of those 6 winners were on my confidence list, along with Yuri Alcantara, and that he should have got a win as well, I felt. 3 of those winners were on my value list. 1 of my 4 losses was a fight I said don't bet on, and I didn't bet on it either. 2 of the other ones were on the low end, and all 4 of the fights I actually lost, the guys that won in the fights that I did not get correct, I put on my non-predicted winners value list in the $5 bet pack. So the bet packs made some good money, and it's those nights where you don't have a great night of betting, where you only win 50-60% of the fights, and if you're still able to win money, that shows how good the bet packs were. You know, it's very easy to win money when you go 9-2 or 10-1, 11-1. But I had a good night anyway. Despite having only 6 wins, I made a lot of cash, especially with Nick Lentz, my number 1 value pick. So certainly check that out. Both $5 and $10 picks will be available over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. And I've had a great record. I think over the last 2 Fox events, I've gone 16-4, and they've been some of my most profitable betting nights of betting. So certainly check that out. A lot of good odds on this event. Thank you very much to all of my sponsors. They can all be seen over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. And finally, before I go, make sure you check out the public pick section on my site. This will be the 4th event since I started the site, that section. You go, you pick all your picks, and then you see what the public is betting on. The public right now 0-3 picking main events, so certainly take a look there. It might help you with some of your betting. If you don't want to invest in a pack, you can at least get that information. And I keep all the stats from past events, so you can check out all that information there as well. That's enough from me. 4 predictions. Let's get into the first one. Our opening prediction comes to us in the Featherweight division. Erik Newbreed, Koch 13-1-0, battles Ricardo, the bully Lamas 12-2-0. Koch is coming off a decision victory over Jonathan Brookins back in September of 2011, with Ricardo Lamas an upset victory over Hatsu Hioki in June of 2012. That's the first thing. Going back to that, Koch out since September 2011, so he's been gone for close to 16 months. So it'll be very interesting to see how he's affected by the potential for ring rust or cage corrosion, whatever you want to call it. Now, both guys, very well-rounded fighters, capable of fighting anywhere inside the cage. Now, Koch, looking at him, his only defeat came against Chad Mendes, where Mendes did what he does to most people, took him down and controlled him. Lamas, on the other hand, 2 defeats. Both came at lightweight against Danny Castillo and Yuri Alcantara. So both guys fighting outside of the division or against top-level competition. That's who were able to beat him, and that's it. Now, Lamas on the feet first. Very nice 1-2 power in his right hand. He will swing big power punches, but also throws combinations. He needs to make sure he uses feint to set up his strikes. He uses a lot of lateral movement, and he has a 64% striking defense, which is a huge edge over Erik Koch if this fight goes the distance, if those numbers begin to pile up. He uses leg kicks very effectively. Lots of heavy leg kicks, body kicks, through a switch kick to knock out Matt Rice, or at least stop him, put him on the ground. Very active and effective kicks versus Hatsu Hioki. Likes to mix up his kicks and punch combinations, which can make things work very well for him. Now, Duke Rufus has trained Erik Koch, and that means he's been working with guys like Anthony Pettis and Alan Belcher. He comes from Muay Thai, kickboxing, and Taekwondo background, so he's also a very good kicker, if you will. On the feet, Koch has a relaxed stance. He manages distance extremely well. He has a long reach for a featherweight. Knight likes to really flash out that long jab. Nice, fast, straight combinations. He stopped Rafael Assunção with a counter right hook, which was very well placed. Hard low kicks, as I already mentioned. Uses limited windup when he does it, which makes it hard to defend against and check. And he stopped Francisco Rivera with a left head kick, which, again, very dangerous if he connects. Now, going to the ground, Ricardo Lamas, NCAA Division III wrestling champion, and also BJJ brown belt. Earlier in his career, he relied on takedowns. Not so much now. It's more to keep the fight standing. He averages 1.87 takedowns per fight, 42% completion rate. So he's pretty good at taking the fight to the ground if he chooses to do so. Against Cub Swanson, he set up the arm triangle, and Cub's is a tough guy to put away, and Lamas has some pretty good ground and pound. He showed excellent defensive grappling against Hatsu Hioki, reversed a takedown in top position. He had excellent balance in that fight. Showed strong in the clinch, good defensive submission, good submission defense, and even attacked Hioki, so he wasn't afraid to engage him on the ground. Now, Erik Koch, 7 of 13 wins have come by submission, but he only averages 0.58 takedowns per fight, so not a lot of ground work for him as far as taking guys down, but he does work with Ben Askren, so a good guy to work on his wrestling. 82% takedown defense, but that number's inflated by the Jonathan Brookins 1 for 20 in takedowns. which was impressive that he defended that. He has a low stance, likes to use the whizzer can use the whizzer very effectively. But all in all, in the Brookins fight, he was pinned on the cage for long durations of the time of the fight, and that's certainly a concern. He's aggressive off his back if he gets taken down, but again, he couldn't keep Brookins off him for big periods of that time. That's certainly an area of concern. Looking at these two fighters, Koch's biggest wins came against Brookins, Rafael Sunsao, and Rivera, which aren't exactly huge names, especially with the Sunsao fighting in a division lower now. While Lamas, upset win over Hioki, upset win over Swanson, a solid victory over a veteran in Bart Palszewski. That's impressive to me. Koch, certainly ring rust could play an effect. He really hasn't been tested against the same level of competition that Lamas has faced, and I really think Lamas' wrestling could help him to score some points in a close fight, whether it be controlling the clinch or taking him down. So my prediction in this fight is Ricardo Lamas to defeat Erik Koch by decision. Up next, we moved to the lightweight division for a battle of former WEC fighters as former WEC lightweight champion Anthony Showtime Pettis, 13-2-0, battles Donald the Cowboy Cerrone, 19-4-0, with 1 no contest. Cerrone's coming off a knockout of Melvin Gillard and has won 2 in a row. Anthony Pettis has also won 2 in a row, is coming off an impressive head kick knockout of Joe Lozon. Now, Pettis has been out of action since February of 2012, so not quite a full year. So again, he could be dealing with ring rust as well, and that's something to keep an eye on in a fight like this against a fighter like Cerrone has been very active. Now, Cerrone's going to have a slight edge in height and reach, which could show up in the kicking and the striking exchanges. Comparing some stats, Cerrone, again, an edge in strikes landed per minute, significant, 3.86 to 1.89, which is a big number there. But Pettis turns the tables and has an edge in strikes absorbed per minute at 1.4 to 3.8. But I have to think Cerrone's 3.8 is being inflated by his performance against Nate Diaz. So I think those numbers are much closer. So statistically, I give an edge to Cerrone in those two categories. Now, Pettis comes from a Taekwondo background. He's a black belt, a lot of dexterity, works the Muay Thai very well. While Cerrone, also a very good Muay Thai fighter, uses a lot of kicks. Both guys do, in fact. Pettis, very fast inside leg kick, really turns the hips over and whips them into his kicks. He had the head kick knockout of Lozon, as I mentioned. He disguises his kicks very well, which makes them hard to handle. He manages distance incredibly effectively, and again, that goes back to his kicking game. Now, Clay Guida, Jeremy Stevens, and Ben Henderson had success against Pettis with their takedowns when they closed the distance and took the kicking game out of the equation. Now, Pettis is very active off his back, and he will take the fight to the ground if he gets the opportunity. Against Stevens, he did that, and again, he's working with Ben Askren as well to improve his wrestling. Now, Cerrone only has 2 wins by knockout on the feet, Gillard and Oliveira, but you also saw it against Dennis Seaver. He dropped him before submitting him. His power is developing, and he's got a lot of knockdowns in his career and chose to finish the fight with submission instead of ground and pound. He's a very relaxed fighter. He has excellent kicks. He steps into them effectively. A lot of punch-kick combinations. Again, he manages range very well as well. He kept changing his rhythm against Jeremy Stevens, which was incredibly effective. He'd go slow, fast, relaxed, explosive. It was very hard to defend against because Stevens didn't know what was about to come at him. He doesn't use a lot of takedowns, but he did fake a takedown attempt against Stevens, and he took him down later in that fight, so he's certainly capable of doing that. Now, Cerrone throws a lot more combinations and mixes up his kicks and punches more than Pettis. Pettis does a lot of single kicks, or he'll throw punching combinations, very rarely doing both. And he throws a lot of flashy kicks, but a lot of them are single attempts that you're capable to avoid if you are looking for them. Now, Cerrone struggled with the aggression of Nate Diaz, and in the Melvin Gillard fight, he got countered by a big left hand, and Gillard caught him running in. And I think that came from a little overconfidence from Donald. He keeps his head up a little high and his hands low, but he's never been knocked out, so he has an excellent chin. But he still needs to be very careful because Anthony Pettis is a dangerous striker. But going back to the Diaz situation, Pettis does not put up the numbers that Diaz does to replicate that output and that success that Diaz had. Cerrone, over his career, his 4 losses, he was submitted by the now lightweight champion Ben Henderson, lost to Diaz based on a huge striking total Diaz, and he lost the Diaz put up, and he lost to Henderson and Varner based on a lot of takedowns. So the 4 guys that beat him had to put up big performances to pick up the win. Now Cerrone, he's got some huge edges in this fight. Again, the ring rust with Pettis, his height and reach, which aren't huge, but again, they could be significant. They just get him that little bit closer to his opponent. Strikes landed per minute is significant if this fight goes the distance if Pettis isn't able to stop him. Strikes absorbed, I think, are closer than the numbers would imply, again, favoring Cerrone. And he throws more combinations, and as far as I'm concerned, I think Pettis needs to stop him in this fight if he's going to defeat him, and I don't think I see it happening. So I've got Donald Cerrone to win probably a close decision over Anthony Pettis. Our co-main event of the evening comes in the UFC's light heavyweight division as Quinton Rampage Jackson, former light heavyweight champion, 32-9-0, battles 19-0 Glover Teixeira. Jackson has lost 2 in a row, while Teixeira has won an impressive 17 consecutive fights, including 2 in a row inside the octagon. Now, this is the last fight on Jackson's UFC contract, and most likely the last time we'll see him in the cage. Big questions are, where is his head at? And he's been out of action for 11 months. How will that affect him? I don't think he's nearly as focused as he used to be, and even though he seems determined to ruin the UFC's plans, I think he's looking to get a final paycheck and then get the heck out of Dodge. Now, Glover, on the other hand, 2-0 inside the cage, inside the octagon, is trying to build his UFC reputation, and this would be the biggest win on his career leisure to date. Now, Page has been trying to goad Glover into a standing battle, saying, he won't stand with me, talking about it in the media, trying to create some pre-fight takedown defense. Very intriguing to see if Glover falls for it and what he looks to accomplish in this fight. Now, both guys have significant power. Glover 12 wins by knockout. Jackson 14 wins by knockout. And they've also been stopped before. Glover 1 time, Page 3 times, most notably by Vanderlei Silva and Shogun Rua. Now, Glover in his debut smashed through Kyle Kingsbury, and in his sophomore appearance shut down Fabio Maldonado in a brutal display. But Jackson, his last knockout came at UFC 92 back in 2008 against Vanderlei Silva. So it's been a long time since Page put somebody to sleep with his hands. Now, you look at Glover, he nailed Maldonado with a big 1-2. He really has a lot of power in his left hook, and that's very dangerous if it's able to connect. He hurt him twice, actually, in that fight with a left hook. And he also has an overhand right, which is dangerous. And he dropped Kingsbury with an uppercut, so he's got some significant power in his hands. All he has to do is touch his opponent, and they're in trouble. He cuts off the cage very well and stalks his opponent. But again, this is what Page wants. He wants a guy who's going to get in close range and strike with him. Now, he did get caught with a couple of left hooks from Fabio Maldonado, and people are talking about that, but my opinion is he let his guard down, and most people would look at that and say, yeah, I think that's what happened too, because who expected Fabio Maldonado to actually fire a shot out in the state he was in? Now, Rampage, he comes forward looking to brawl. He throws a lot of hooks with a lot of power, but he's had trouble with range in the past, especially against John Jones, and even against Bader he had trouble getting in outside the range to make contact. He's going to have a 3-inch reach disadvantage and 1-inch height disadvantage against Glover, which I expect to show up as well. On the ground, Glover's a BJJ black belt with 5 wins by sub. Now, Page has 7 wins by submission, but he hasn't picked up a legitimate submission victory since 2001, so I don't expect to see him taking Glover down and looking for a tap-out. Now, Glover has been dominant on the ground, but neither Kingsbury or Maldonado are overly great mat technicians, but still he's very capable of fighting a match on the ground, especially if he gets in a dominant position. Against Fabio, he scored a very easy single-leg takedown, and I expect he's most likely going to look to take Rampage where he is the weakest. He has big ground and pound. He uses devastating elbows on Fabio Maldonado. When he gets in full mount, it is big-time trouble for his opposition. Set up an arm triangle against Kyle Kingsbury, which is something he really likes to rely on, and he's very good at that technique. Now, Page has had trouble with takedowns in the past. Bader and Jones both took care of him in that area. And he struggled with Jones in the mat. Jones kept him tied up and was effective. But Page does have very good takedown defense at 78%. Now, that number's been decreasing over the last couple of years, but still it's a notable number. So it's not going to be a cakewalk anyway. Glover in this fight simply has more levels. He could strike with Rampage and win that battle, or he could take him down. Rampage at this point is almost a pure boxer, and he wants to stand and bang. And he doesn't even throw enough kicks, really, to be classified as a well-rounded striker for MMA. We haven't seen Glover tested yet in the UFC, but I don't think Page is the one to do it. If he lands and connects, he could hurt or knock Glover out, but that sounds like a puncher's chance to me. So my prediction is Glover Teixeira to defeat Rampage Jackson by TKO. In our main event of the evening, we head to the UFC's Flyweight division as the reigning and newly minted Flyweight champion Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, 16-2-1, battles newly crowned #1 contender and former Ultimate Fighter winner, John the Magician Dodson, 15-5-1. Johnson's won back-to-back fights over Ian McCall and Joseph Benavidez, cementing him as the #1 flyweight in the world, while John Dodson has won 5 in a row in his most recent outing, stopping Jussier Formiga by TKO, a guy who was formerly considered a top flyweight, if not #1 in the world. Now, first things first, coming into this fight, both guys are almost going to be exactly the same size, which is going to be a new thing for both fighters, as traditionally they are the smaller man inside the cage. Additionally, both guys rely heavily on speed and the ability to outwork their opponents, and the big question here is, who's going to deal better with the fact that the other guy is going to be just as fast as them? Now, looking at Dodson first, he has 6 wins by knockout, including his wins over Formiga, TJ Dillashaw in the tournament finals, which took place at bantamweight, and also stopping Johnny Bedford, which doesn't count officially, stopping Bedford in the show also at bantamweight. He has a big power in his left hand, which is something we'll have to watch out for. But flipping the tables, in fights that go the distance, he has a very average record of 6-5, which is far from impressive. Now, Johnson, on the other hand, 3 wins by knockout, 6 by sub, and 7 by decision, so much more capable when he goes the distance. So that's and he's not a finisher, but he certainly has a more well-rounded ability to put guys away over the course of his career. Now, Dodson comes in with an average of 4.53 strikes per minute, which is very impressive. And Johnson no slouch, he's at 3.11, but again, Dodson a huge edge in the strikes landed per minute. But on the flip side, Dodson gets hit almost 3.4 times per minute, and compared to only 1.92 for Johnson. So we flip the tables, and it's Dodson who's also taking more punishment in order to deliver that punishment. So something to keep in mind there. Now Dodson, very fast hands. He likes to attack in combos. He has, as I say, has significant power, and he likes jumping knees and throwing counters. We saw him against Dillashaw catching with a counter as he came in, and against Bedford he did the same thing. Now, Demetrious Johnson, the champion, he likes to attack in flurries. He moves in and out well. He has a ton of movement. He has excellent head movement and footwork. He's able to move in close, slip and move away from his opponent's strikes, and then land his own, which is very impressive and takes a lot of skill and makes him a very difficult fighter to compete against. He timed a right hand versus Benavidez as he came in and continued to land it. And against Dominic Cruz, the bantamweight champion, who's got some of the best footwork in the business, Demetrious gave him all he could handle and really forced Cruz to take him down. He's one of the few guys that actually took him down. Now, taking a look at that, Johnson averages 3.25 takedowns per fight. He landed 5 against Joseph Benavidez, which really surprised a lot of people. Not me, because I picked Johnson in the major upset in that fight. John Dodson, on the other hand, though, 100% takedown defense. This guy is next to impossible to take down. He's so quick and able to slip out of these very difficult situations. He's very hard to take off his feet. That will be an interesting matchup to see what happens there. Now, Johnson is 0-2-1 in fights when his opponents have an edge in takedowns landed, and those were significant edges. Brad Pickett went 10-2, had an advantage of 10-2 in takedowns landed. Cruz went 10-1 in takedowns landed. And Ian McCall in that draw that I thought Ian McCall actually won had an edge of 4 takedowns to none. So certainly, if you can get the edge on Johnson in takedowns, you can definitely defeat him. He's 6-0 in fights where he doesn't lose the takedown battle, just to show how that stat holds up. Now, Dodson, he averages 1.13 takedowns per fight, so he's not a huge takedown guy. He's more than capable of putting you on your back. Only 33% completion rate, so again, not that great. Demetrious Johnson, 60% takedown defense, so not 100% great like Dodson's, but still very capable. Now, looking at John Dodson, when he debuted at Flyweight against Tim Elliott, he had a lot of trouble with Tim Elliott's pressure and kept coming forward. And I think the fact that he was still faster than Elliott, but not on the level he was used to at bantamweight, that really gave him some difficulty and didn't allow him to set up his strikes. Now, Johnson, on the other hand, he didn't look great in his official flyweight debut against Ian McCall in the first fight, but he really refocused well and amped it up in the second fight, and was just too quick for his opponent, and he did that much further against a very difficult opponent in Joseph Benavidez, and I was really impressed with what he was capable in that fight. Now, Johnson has some of the fastest transitions from striking to takedowns, and I think that'll give Dodson some trouble, especially if Dodson tries to come forward and Johnson's able to duck under and take him down. Johnson simply faced better competition at 125 pounds, and this will prepare him for this fight again, facing McCall twice and Benavidez, plus Cruz, another fast guy who relies a lot on speed and technique, while Dodson facing Tim Elliott and Jussier Formiga, not speed guys, not the type of guys that you would want to face to get ready for a guy like Demetrious Johnson. Dodson's going to struggle more with the fact that Johnson is as fast, if not or faster than him, and he won't have a big an advantage or an advantage at all. I think that shows up here. And John Dodson, as I said, he's 6-5 when he can't finish his opponents. I don't think he's going to finish Demetrious Johnson here. So my prediction is Demetrious Johnson to defeat John Dodson by decision. So those are my 4 card predictions for the upcoming UFC on Fox 6 event. I'll break down all 8 preliminary fights throughout fight week over at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I am just working my butt off to get all these predictions out there. And of course, we have UFC 156 the following week. We're gonna have 3. This is the second of 3 consecutive events, so certainly a lot going on in the UFC world. Very much looking forward to it. Please consider buying my bet packs. I've had 3 pretty solid shows in a row, and as I said, I'm 16-4 over the last 2 UFC on Fox events. I made a lot of money at those 2 events, so certainly look into it. Walkout wear prize packs for the winners. And check out the public picks. Please make picks, because the more people pick, the more we get an impression of what the public is backing. And right now the public 0-3 picking main events since I started the public pick section. All the stats available there as well. So certainly a lot coming on the horizon. UFC 156 will be the next time I'm talking to you. As always, thank you very much for tuning in.